will have an opportunity to connect with God as we get to worship and also hear what God has for us in a message. So let's get started this morning.
Stand and sing with us. Come, let us worship our King. Come, let us bow at His feet. He has done great things. See what a Savior has done. See how His love overcomes. He has done great things. Great things. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquer the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awaken to life. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. You've been faithful through every storm. You'll be faithful forevermore. You have done great things, and I know you will do it again. For your promise is yes and amen. You will do great things. God, you do great things. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquer the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awaken to life. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. Hallelujah, God, above it all. Hallelujah, God, unshakable. Hallelujah, you have done great things. Hallelujah, God, above it all. Hallelujah, God, unshakable. Hallelujah, you have done great things. You've done great things. Oh, hero of heaven, you've conquered the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awaken to life. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. You have done great things. Oh God, you do great things. Go ahead and have a seat for just a minute.
Hey, good morning and welcome to The Bridge. We are glad that you are here with us this morning. And if today is your first time, welcome. Hopefully you'll decide to make this your church home. And we are excited that you are with us this morning. If you're out there on Facebook and streaming us, welcome. enjoy the service while you're at home or wherever you're at, and we're excited for you to be with us this morning. So a couple things real quick. Out in the lobby, there's a giving tree, and we want to help the people in our community. And so if you want to take an ornament off that tree, bring it back with a $25 gift card to Walmart. This gives us the opportunity of helping people within our church, but also people in our community that might need that help during this Christmas season that might be just struggling a little bit. And we want to show God's love and help provide for them and just give them a hope this season. So you can take those. Once you bring your gift card back, you can place it in the basket at the end of service, or you can give it to Misty Fox, and you can do that up through the 22nd of December. And we are grateful that you guys love our community, that we're for our community, and that we get to invest in our community. So the other thing we have coming up that we've been planning for a while is our Christmas Eve services, and we are excited about Christmas neighbors who you can invite to one of the services, either at 3:30 or 5, or a coworker or some family members that just want to hear about a God that loves them and cares for them. We'll also have our children that will be up here singing. We'll have some great songs and our traditional lighting of the candles at the end. And so it's just going to be a great evening on Christmas Eve. And again, begin to think about who you want to invite to those services. There's a ton of announcements in your program from Holiday Expo that's this weekend. If you want to come check that out, to family Christmas bundles in the lobby that you can buy for your family and do that together. But this morning I want you guys to stand, and I want to pray for us, and then we're going to continue singing some songs and worshiping God. But let me pray. Hey, God, thank you so much for today. Thank you that we can come and gather in your name. Thank you that you do great things, and the chains are broken, and you give us freedom, God. And so I pray that this morning that our hearts and our minds will be open to you. I pray that, God, that we will give you everything this morning, from our bodies to our minds to our voices to our hearts, that we just look to you. God, we give you praise today, and we love you and thank you in your name. Amen. Hey, turn around, tell somebody good morning, give them a handshake, fist bump, elbow tag, something like that.
Joy to the world, the Lord is come. As we move towards Christmas, we want to teach you guys a new song. And the song is by Chris Tomlin, and it's called His Name is Wonderful. And it's such a great Christmas song. It talks about the baby in a manger, but it also speaks to what we call Jesus, the different names for him. The chorus says this: His name is Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Prince of Peace, Everlasting Father, Emmanuel, Holy One, Son of God, and Savior of the world. And that's why we celebrate this season, because this God came to this earth for us, disguised as a little baby. And we celebrate that this season. So as you catch on to this song, go ahead and sing it with us. Come see the baby, crib for a bed. His mother Mary laid down his sweet head. The starlight was shining, the wise men were led. Come see the baby, worship him. His name is Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Prince of Peace, Everlasting Father, Emmanuel, Holy One, Son of God, of the world. Come and adore him on bended knee. He came to ransom someone like me. What could I offer? What could I bring? Come and adore him, King of Kings. His name is Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Prince of Peace, Everlasting Father, Emmanuel, Holy One, Son of God, Savior of the world. And the greatness of his reign will never end. There be peace on earth and all goodwill to men. Come, let us worship him. Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Prince of Peace, Everlasting Father, Holy One, Son of God, Savior of the world. His name is Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Prince of Peace, Everlasting Father, Emmanuel, Holy One, Son of God, Savior of the world. Let's stay in that same spirit and sing about this beautiful, wonderful, powerful name of Jesus.
You were the Word at the beginning, one with God the Lord Most High. Your hidden glory in creation, now revealed in you are Christ. What a beautiful
go into this verse, let's remember why we celebrate this season. Because Jesus came to this earth for us.
Death could not hold you, the veil torn before you. You silenced the boast of sin and grave. The heavens are roaring, the praise of your glory. For you are raised to life again. You have no rival. You have no equal, now and forever, God, you reign. Yours is the kingdom, yours is the glory, yours is the name above all names. What a powerful name it is, what a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a powerful name it is, and nothing can stand against. What a powerful name it is, of Jesus. What a powerful name it is, the name of Jesus. What a powerful name it is, the name of Jesus.
Yes, God, what a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus. And we celebrate today, this time that your Son came into this earth because you love us so much. We worship that powerful name. We celebrate the wonderful name of Jesus. God, thank you for meeting us here today. Lord, we ask that you continue to speak to us this morning as we draw closer to you, as we listen to the words you have for us. God, as we enter into this Christmas time, let us not forget the reason we celebrate. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thanks so much for singing, and have a seat.
Good morning. The ghosts of Christmas past. That's what we're going to be talking about today in a minute. That's our series we're starting, but before we get to that, I had a text this week that got me thinking about a topic, and I thought I'm just going to open with that even before we dive into. I tried to figure out how to work it into the message, but it's not going to work. But it's something I thought was important that I just want to talk about before the message, and it's the idea of Advent. The question was, so this whole thing about Advent, what is it, and celebrating it. So as I dove into Christmas Day on the 25th, that's this time of Advent, and you've seen Advent calendars and wreaths and candles, and I was at a Christmas party the other day, and we were doing the White Elephant Exchange, and I almost got to keep them, but I lost them. Some Advent socks. Christmas socks, you punch out a different thing on different days. So there's all kinds of ideas about Advent, but I wanted to find out where it came from. So I did a little deeper dive into Advent, and in my research I found that, as with most deep historical dates, sometimes it's hard to get an exact date, but it's believed that the Advent started around the year 480 A.D., so that's quite a while ago that this season of Advent has been around. The reason that it was started was to help Christians prepare for the birth of Jesus, which we know Jesus had already been born 480 years before that, but to help us to prepare for our celebration of the birth of Jesus on the 25th, and to help us prepare for Jesus' second coming. So it's really twofold, remembering and celebrating his first coming and preparing for his second coming. The second coming of Jesus just means that, okay, he came, was born as a baby, raised, lived, spoke, preached, died, was crucified, but then on the third day rose again. After he rose, Jesus spent about 40 days with people hanging out, and then he went and ascended to be back in heaven with God. Okay, so that's kind of Jesus' story. But while he was living, he said, I'm coming back, and I'm going to come back for you. So from that time, the disciples started thinking, it could be tomorrow. I mean, we don't know when he's coming back. So even over the last couple thousand years, we live in an anticipation that Jesus promised that he's coming back. So when is that time going to be? Paul, right after the first apostles, then there was Paul. Paul even wrote about how one of his books, 2 Thessalonians, writes a lot about anticipating when Jesus is going to return. And we need to be ready, but we don't want to just stop living. We need to be ready. And so we kind of all live in this season of Advent year-round because we're anticipating when Jesus is going to return. But we also celebrate Advent from 480 on to remember why we celebrate on Christmas Day. Remember what the season is all about. You've heard Jesus is the reason for the season. Well, he is. I've also heard people say, don't take Christ out of Christmas. Guess what? You can't, because that's why there is Christmas. Now, if somebody else, maybe a retailer or somebody, doesn't celebrate Jesus' birth, to me, that's okay. That's their choice. They don't know Jesus yet. So if they want to do that, that's their thing. But how can we prepare ourselves for Christmas? All right, so let me give you one more little bit about Advent. This is also free of charge. You may not want this part. You may want to do this for just a minute. But when they first start preparing for, there are other ways that we can maybe cleanse a little bit, but that's not biblical fasting. That's just going without food so that I can put my attention on the Lord. All right, so the early church said, in order to prepare for Christmas, they want to fast. They encouraged fasting 3 days a week. Later on, it became 2 days a week. One of the church leaders early on said, no, we need to fast the entire every day leading up to Christmas during that time of Advent. Since then, a lot has changed, and we celebrate it different ways. I didn't even know fasting was supposed to be a part of it, to tell you the truth, until I just read this recently. At the same time as reading that, I'm also in a Bible study with some guys on Wednesday mornings, and in this Bible study, we were studying through the Sermon on the Mount, and that's the time where Jesus preached in Matthew 5, 6, and 7, and it's probably Jesus' most famous sermon that he gave. He talks about the Lord's Prayer and the model prayer, how we're supposed to kind of pray like, but right after that, he talks about the topic of fasting. So I'm like getting a double whammy here. I'm learning about Advent and how they fasted, and then I'm seeing Jesus says, and here's something, when Jesus talked about fasting, he did not say, some of you may want to fast someday and, to dedicate yourself to the Lord. He didn't say that. Jesus said, when you fast. So he assumed we were going to, and then he went on and talked about fasting a little bit. So as I'm hearing all this and wrestling through, I'm thinking in my mind, when it comes between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I'll even stretch it to New Year's, to me, that's traditionally been a time not of fasting, but a time of feasting. All right, that's the time to eat. I mean, there's cookies laying around at different parties you go to, and pie and so on, and I just have the sweet tooth, and I like to feast during that time. And then January 1 hits, and I look at my body, and I said, okay, it's time to fast. I need to do something, and spiritually, I want to dedicate my year to the Lord, so I begin with that. Oh, and by the way, I'll just throw this out. In January, we're going to do a church-wide fast. Anybody who wants to, it's not, anything you have to, and you can do it different times. We'll tell you more about that later, but we're going to introduce that this January. But as I'm preparing myself in the spirit of Advent, I'm thinking, all right, I've got to do a little bit of fasting along with my feasting. So I'm going to throw that out to you just free of charge. If you want to do something with that, you can. That's what the early church did. It's a way that we can help prepare ourselves for the real celebration that we're going to do. Either way, find a way to not get caught up this Christmas season in the materialism and the hustle and bustle, the running around, everything going on. Find a way to get your focus on the Lord and what Christmas is all about, and the second coming, that Jesus will come again, and we don't know when, but preparing ourselves for that. Okay, so that's the little bonus sermon inside a sermon. Now let's move towards the idea of these ghosts of Christmases past. This is the series we're going to be in for the next 3 weeks. Hopefully it will also prepare us for Christmas. And when I thought about the first ghosts that we're going to talk about, let me just tell you what these are. These are things that most of us, I would say, battle against in our nature, things that maybe we've suppressed throughout the year, but in the holiday season, at Christmas time, sometimes they well up a little bit within us. And the one I'm going to talk about today is one that I've I'm going to say I've battled with, I've gotten better at, but I've still got a little ways to go at. I'm still working on. And it's one that maybe others can connect with. Before I introduce that topic, though, let me talk a little bit about the process of getting to look more like Jesus. There's a big biblical word that is called sanctification. All right, so I don't want you to get overwhelmed by the word because it's a pretty simple concept. Sanctification just means I'm in the process of becoming more like Jesus. I'm not there yet. I don't arrive. In fact, this side of heaven, I'm never going to be perfect, looking like Jesus, but I want to move. I want to keep moving to look more and more like him really every day. So the way I was before I knew Christ, you know what? I didn't look much like Jesus. When I decided to follow him, I didn't become perfect. You didn't become perfect when you decided to follow Christ, did you? No. We have a new nature. It's in Jesus. Now we need to begin the process of looking more and more like him until one day, not this side of heaven, but one day we will be like him. Okay, so in the short run then, I'm in process, and here's the topic for the day, the ghost that we're going to be talking about, that thing that sometimes wells up in us is I want to get better, and I'm going to challenge us to get better at overcoming offenses. Offenses when somebody does something that offends you and ticks you off. Can you do something? Do you do something about it, or can you overcome that and look more and more like Christ as you go? I'm growing. I've got a little ways to go. The holidays sometimes bring that out, sometimes in little ways. We'll talk about some of those, sometimes in bigger ways, some big offenses that we've encountered, and we're going to talk about some of those as well. But I think about the hustle and bustle of Christmas season. I think about going to malls. I don't really like to go to malls anyway, but at Christmas time, or Walmart or shopping places, it's crazy in there. And it would be easy to get offended in my case, at places like that. So what am I going to do about that? How can I overcome being easily offended? But what other ways maybe you can identify that you could be easily offended? What if I said the word just driving? I don't need to say too much more about that. Most of the guys in the room are going, oh, shoot, now he's talking about me. And ladies sometimes too. I mean, when I'm on the interstate and I'm approaching construction and somebody wants to edge just a little bit further before cutting in and they cut me off, and I want to say, well, maybe the old me, but hopefully I'm growing a little bit and I'm not quite as easily offended. Or perhaps when it comes to ball games and coaches, and you ever get offended by that. I coached a little bit, and when I did, that helped me not be quite as intense with the way somebody else coaches or my kids are being coached. But sometimes offense can just well up inside of us. Or what about social media? Could you be offended by different things when it comes to social media? Probably there's ways that we could be, and some of us are. Or texting. Here's a question I have. Is there sort of an obligatory amount of time that you should return a text by and you still be okay? I have a friend. He doesn't go to church here, so you don't have to start thinking about who could he be talking about. Okay, this is a longtime friend of mine, and we text each other periodically, and when we do, we usually... Long ago, I texted my friend, asked him a pretty important question to me. I needed some help with something, and so I asked him, could he give me another one of our friends' phone numbers so that I could get a hold of that guy to get some help. A day goes by, another day. It's about 3 or 4 days, and I'm thinking, man, By this time, I've texted other people, I've called some people, I've found some answers to my difficult question, but no help from my friend. Well, finally, he texts me back, hey, sorry about that, and he sends me that phone number. Thanks, appreciate it. So I text the other friend who was a mutual, we had worked together years ago, so I knew him. He never texted me back, that guy, thinking, my goodness, what is going on with these guys? Okay, but I get over the offense. I'm not going to be too bothered by it, so I move on, and I text my good buddy another text another week or two later and ask him just another pretty simple question. He doesn't text me back again. Now, we always text each other back right away, so I'm thinking, is he mad at me? Have I done something? I don't know that I've done anything. My mind is wondering. I'm starting to get just a little bit offended. I need counseling. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is, your pastor. But so my friend eventually, probably 5 days later, texts me back, and he says, hey, sorry about that. Yeah, I'll give you a call. And I said, well, I can't talk right now. Can you call me maybe after 6 tonight? He's like, sure, I'll give you a call tonight. That was 3 weeks ago, and I still haven't heard from him. Okay, so I'm getting over being easily offended. I'm in process. I'm trying to look more like Jesus. I'm trying to move that way. But do you know anybody who is easily offended? Most of us could raise our hand, know somebody. If we raised our hand, if they saw us raising our hand, would they be offended? Probably. What about us? Are there times when sometimes we get a little more easily offended than maybe we should? Probably. When it comes to the Christmas season and you think about Christmas parties, sometimes that can bring stuff up in us. Sometimes it's with family members. Maybe they've hurt us in the past and now we have to see them again. Sometimes it's not so drastic, but it's that one family member who always comes to the party late, shows up late, and they don't bring anything with them except an empty Tupperware container because they're going to bring something home with them. Maybe that's just your family. I don't know. My family. So also there's people at our parties that sometimes they like to bring up the one thing that they know is going to get to us a little bit. And so perhaps they want to talk about the way you're raising your kids. It's not right. And you're going, hey, man, you can talk about anything, but you start talking about that, it's going to be a fight. Don't even go there. Or somebody else knows how to push your button a little bit when it comes to politics. Maybe you really like Trump or you really don't like Trump. Somewhere in the line there, somebody's going to push a button and say, hey, and just get you going a little bit. We can be easily offended. And today I want to talk about how to get over being easily offended, because I don't think God wants us to spend time with people we're called to love, we're supposed to love, by being ticked all the time and to walk around that way. And especially when it comes to some bigger things, some harder things in life. So to start us off, to get us into this, I've got a little saying I want to give to you. And I think it's helpful. All right, it just starts off, my life is too short and my calling is too great to live offended. My life, it's not long enough that I can be walking around mad at people or being ticked or being offended. And my calling is too great to live offended. In fact, why don't you just vocalize this? Why don't you say this with me just so we can start processing a little bit? Ready? My life is too short and my calling is too great to live offended. My life is too short. Tim talked about that if you were here last week just a little bit. He talked about our life is like a mist. All right, it's here today, it's gone tomorrow. My kids, we've raised 3 kids, and now they're all married, and they're out of the house. And it's like you look back and you say, where did the time go? When your program, one of the announcements is about Hot Shots basketball. And I remember when our kids were really little, and they were playing Hot Shots basketball. And it's like, it seems like maybe not yesterday, but a few days ago, it wasn't too long ago. Where did the time go? And now they're all out of the house, and we get them back around Thanksgiving time, and that was nice, and during Christmas time. But life is short. It's too short to live offended. And our calling is great. If you're a Christ follower, you've got a pretty great calling. You are called to bring the good news of Jesus to the world. That's a big calling. We're all called to do that in the Great Commission that Jesus offered in his last words that he gave us, to take the good news of Jesus to the world, at least to the people around us being part of the world. That's a great calling. We're called to be, as Jesus was the light of the world, we're called to take his light to the world. That's a great calling. We're called to be the salt of the earth. Jesus said in that Sermon on the Mount I was talking about, if a salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? We're called to be seasoning, to add flavor to the people around us, to add life to the people around us. We're called to be the hands and feet of Jesus to people. We're called to love people and to point them to Jesus. That's a great calling. Our calling is too great to live offended, and our life is too short. So what are we going to do about it? Well, today, what I'd like to do is I'd like to look at a verse and unpack that a little bit, and then introduce a couple other verses and a couple thoughts. And the first verse we're going to look at is from Proverbs. It's 19:11. It says, "A person's wisdom yields patience, and it's to one's glory to overlook an offense." It's to one's glory to overlook an offense. So when you talk about overlooking an offense, what are we talking about there? What's it mean to does it mean that we forget about the offense or pretend like the offense never happened? Is that what it means? No. The word overlook actually comes from, that's the English word, comes from two Hebrew words, and the words mean to pass over, to get above, to rise above the offense. So we need to figure out how to, okay, the offense happens, I was hurt, but how can I rise above that offense? As I was thinking about this a little bit, I thought about my marriage. Missy and I have been married 30 years. In those 30 years, I can honestly tell you that we have never fought. I'm lying, I'm kidding. We do. I mean, fight. I mean, what's a fight? It's a disagreement, right? But we have our disagreements, and we have through the years. Looking back, I had a friend of mine who we had each been married, Missy and I had been married, and they had been married probably a couple years. And at some point in there, he tells me something like, he goes, you know, my wife and I, we never fight. We've never ever fought before. And I'm going, what? I must be really screwing this thing up. I don't know how to be married. I'm not doing it right. And he says he never fights. That's maybe what I'm supposed to be like. Well, I find out a few years after that, he tells me, yeah, we've gone through this and almost been divorced, and he's telling me all these things. I'm going, dude, you told me one time that you never fight. He goes, I don't know what I was talking about then. Thinking, well, you set a pretty high standard for me. I thought I was doing it wrong. But through the years, I can tell you that Missy and I have had disagreements. When we have a disagreement, we have a choice to make at that point. The choice is what are we going to do with that? Are we going to let it settle in? Are we going to relive it and rehash it? Am I going to say in my mind, oh, I can't believe she did that, and replay it over and over so the next time I talk to her, I can tell her all about what she did, and likewise she for me? Or can I release it? Can I let it go? That's what we're talking about when we overlook the offense. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. It's my choice of what I do with that offense and how I can move past it, or I can hang on to it. When you hang on, what happens? You can see it in my body language. You get tense, you get bitter. You replay it over and over. Or I can release the offense. If you don't release the offense, your life is going to become more and more bitter. That's the way it is. It's to one's glory to overlook an offense. And life is too short, and our calling is too great to live offended. So today, as we unpack this a little bit, I've got a statement I want to start with, and then I'm going to build on that a little bit. Oh, I probably ought to. This French philosopher, I had this in your notes too, which I think was kind of cool what he said. You may have heard of René Descartes, and you may not know him from philosophy. You may know him from theology. He was a famous theologian. He was a famous mathematician from the 1600s. All right, a long time ago, and yet we still remember things about him. This is what he said when it comes to rising above these offenses. Whenever anyone has offended me, I try to raise my soul so high that the offense cannot reach it. As I approach God, as I get closer to Him, I'm raising my soul so that I'm not bothered so much by the offense. That offense can't reach where I'm at as I draw closer to God, is what he's saying. I thought that was pretty good on how we move closer to God and move away from the offense. So here's the statement then I was talking about. With God's help, I'm getting over this. I like the first part of that because I can't just get over these offenses without God's help a lot of times. But only with God's help I can move beyond this. We need God's help to move beyond our offenses. So today we're going to talk about two different types of offenses and getting over those. The first one is the little things. I'm getting over being easily offended. All right, I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm getting over being easily offended. That can be a statement that I hope that we can all proclaim, that that's the direction we want to move as we become more sanctified, more like Christ. We look more like him. Paul talks about in Ephesians, always be humble and gentle, be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love. Paul is telling us right from the start that we need to make allowance because nobody's perfect. When you became a Christian, you didn't become perfect. We talked about that. Paul knows that we're not perfect, and therefore we need to make allowance for each other's faults because we love people, because we care. But part of the problem comes is that when we want to be judged by people, we want to be judged by our good intentions. But we prefer to judge people by the actions that they did. This is also in your notes if you're a note taker. Most people judge others by their actions, but we hope to be judged by our intentions. For instance, I do something that offends somebody. They come to me and they say, "Hey man, why'd you do that? You knew that would hurt me. You hurt me." And my response is, "Hey man, I didn't mean to hurt you. You know my heart. I'm not trying to hurt you. I would never do that. Hey, judge me by my intentions, not by my actions. Sometimes I might misstep, but judge me by my heart, by my intentions." But on the other hand, if you do something to me, I'm pretty quick to not think about your intentions. I'm much more quick to think about what you did. You cut me off in traffic. You did something. You made me mad. I'm judging you by your actions. If somebody brings me an example and they're telling me about this somebody at work who did this, or my kids tell me something, or my wife, I'm not too bad at being able to say, well, what was going on in their world? Let's think about that. Because I know that person. That doesn't seem like them. I mean, I believe that they did the thing, but maybe they were having a terrible day. Maybe something happened at home. But now I can do that for other people, but when somebody does something to me, it takes me a minute to think that way. My first response is what they did. Why did they do that? And judging them by their actions. My advice is we need to contemplate where somebody else is coming from. Maybe we need to pray for somebody else. Sometimes it's even appropriate to ask somebody, "Can I pray for you for this or something? I see you're going through some stuff. Is there anything I can pray for you for?" When you ask somebody if you can pray for them, many times they'll say, "I appreciate that." It's possible they are going through something. Maybe the holidays are bringing something out in them as well, and they've got something they're dealing with. Because life is too short and our calling is too great, we've got to find a way to get over being easily offended. But there's a bigger issue, and that I want to talk a little bit about. It's I'm getting over the big stuff, the big offenses. Because there are many people who have been hurt in major ways. And when we've been hurt, it's hard to just get over. Dave, are you telling me I just have to get over that? Yes, but not in a way like it's like, just get over it. It's like we need to draw closer to the Lord, as Descartes talked about us. As we put our attention on him, as we will rise above those offenses. Paul talks a little bit about how we move past those huge things, the betrayals in life, the time that somebody lied about you and it really hurt and it stuck with you, something your parents did when you feel like they didn't raise you well. Maybe there's abuse in a relationship. Perhaps you've been betrayed and your spouse has committed adultery. I mean, there's some heavy things that we have to deal with at times. What do we do with those? Paul talks to us a little bit about that in Colossians. This is what he says. He says, make allowance for each other's faults. Here we say that, read the same thing he talked about earlier. Make allowance and forgive anyone who offends you. How? Well, he tells us how. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. I talked to somebody after first service about